welcome, madam, for this particular
Thank you.
episode of Platform.
Thank you, Dr. Sandeep.
Yeah. And in that case, then I think we shall go ahead and start off with the first presentation. Dr. Varnika, you're there? Dr. Varnika? Just a second, madam.
All right.
Shravan?
Yes, sir. Sir Varnika was there on the group. 1 second, so let me just check.
I can see her name in the group.
Yes, sir. The name is there on the
Okay,
group.
should I put off my video?
No, madam.
Only audio?
No. You can put your video, madam. No problem, madam.
All right.
Just a second. Or then shall we go to Dr. Prince? If Dr. Prince is there, then we'll start off with Dr. Prince and then we'll go to Dr. Varnika.
Okay, sir. I'm here, sir. Prince.
Yeah, Prince, you are here, no? Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Prince is actually from Madras Medical College, and he will now actually present on, I think, axilla, no? PBC axilla, right?
Yes, sir. Yes. And not axilla,
Yeah.
sir. PBC hand, sir. Hand deformity.
Hand. Okay. So shall we start off, Prince?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Dr.
Dr. Sandeep.
Get your... Yes, madam.
Yeah, you want us to finish off with the hand completely and then go on to the axilla, or you want both cases to be presented and then I should ask the questions? How do you want to do
Madam,
it?
that's for you. Madam,
Because there will be a lot of intermingling.
Correct, madam. Madam, it could be done either way, madam. If you want both the cases to be presented upfront and then you want to ask the questions, that can be done like that. Or you want to specifically ask questions to Prince, things pertaining to hand, that can also be done. It's for you to take a call, madam.
All right. So, how are they comfortable with asking questions only to the person who's presenting, right? That is how
Yes,
it
madam.
should go.
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So, if Prince is ready, we'll do the hand first.
Okay, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am, and good evening, everyone.
But I can't see your screen, Prince.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'll put up my slide. Now is it visible?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
just coming.
Now is it visible?
Yes.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Prince, final year MCH resident, Madras Medical College. My guide and mentor, Professor Jagan Mohan, Professor and HOD, Department of Plastic Surgery at Madras Medical College. So today I'll be presenting a 36-year-old female patient. She's a resident of Pala, Kerala. She's a homemaker and she's a right-hand dominant person presented with chief complaints of deformity of right hand and difficulty in using her right hand for the past 1 year duration. Coming to history of present illness, patient was apparently asymptomatic till 1 year back when she sustained a thermal burn to her right hand due to a stove explosion when she was cooking. And she was taken to the nearby hospital where she was admitted and treated with regular dressings, and skin grafting has been done for the raw areas and the wound healed. And for the initial 1 month, splinting was done, and after which she refused the splinting and further follow-ups. And now the patient came with complaints of deformity of her right hand, leading to a decreased function of the hand, and the deformities were gradually progressing over past 1 year. Now, past history, patient is not a non-case of diabetes, hypertension, coronary artery disease, or pulmonary tuberculosis. She doesn't undergone any major surgeries in the past. Personal history, patient consumes mixed diet, normal bowel and bladder habits, and she doesn't have any addictions. Coming to general examination, she is conscious oriented to time, place, and person. She is moderately built and nourished. Pulse rate is 80 per minute. BP is 130 by 78 millimeter of mercury. There is no pallor, icterus, clubbing cyanosis, lymphadenopathy, or pedal edema. To local examination of the right upper limb, patient was examined in the sitting position, shoulder by side of chest, elbow flexed, and the attitude of the limb was there is a flexion deformity of the wrist, hyperextension of all MCP joints, including the thumb, flexion deformity of the PIP joints, and a reduced first web space. A hypopigmented scar involving both the palmar and dorsal aspect of the hand, including all fingers extending to the elbow, was seen. And the areas of hypopigmentation seen on the forearm and the dorsum of the hand. The axilla was free of any scars, and the shoulder was having a full range of motion. In the cubital fossa, the proximal part of the scar was extending to the cubital fossa, and no contracture bands were there. And the elbow, there was a mild flexion contracture of 10 degree, and other than this, all other movements were full. The radioulnar joint, the supination was restricted. It was coming only to the mid-prone position, but the pronation was full. And the wrist was at 30 degree flexion, further flexion possible up to 10 degree, but no extension possible. From the wrist and further distal joints were like almost in a fixed deformity, and the movements were like very least. And wrist, there were no ulnar and radial deviation possible. Now, the MCP joint of fingers, of all fingers, second to fifth fingers, was at a fixed 70 degree of hyperextension, and there were no passive movements possible in the MCP joint of any fingers. The PIP joint of all these fingers were 70 degree flexion, fixed flexion deformity, and no passive movements again possible in PIP joints also. And the DIP joints of all fingers were in a fixed extension deformity, and no passive movements were possible. Everyone, like all DIP joints, were in like 10 to 15 degree of extension, hyperextension. And thumb is in 30 degree radial abducted position, and the MCP of the thumb was in fixed hyperextension, 70 degree fixed hyperextension, and no passive movements possible. IP of the thumb was in 10 degree fixed flexion and no passive movements possible. And all web spaces were partially fused. On attempted flexion and extension of fingers, flickering movements noted in the proximal forearm, the distal sensations were intact, and peripheral pulses are not adequately felt through the thick scar. No other injuries were there. I'll come to diagnosis, ma'am.
All right.
Okay. My diagnosis is post-burn contracture deformity of the right hand. As per the Macaulay's grading, it's a grade 4 for the past 1 year duration, and the deformities are mild flexion contracture of the elbow, pronation contracture of forearm, flexion deformity of the wrist, hyperextension deformity of all MCP joints of all fingers, flexion deformity of all PIP joints, hyperextension deformity of all DIP joints, hyperextension deformity of the thumb MCP joint, and partially contracted first web space and other web spaces. So this is my diagnosis, and an X-ray of the patient has already been done. This is the X-ray, AP and oblique view of the hand and the distal forearm. And in this, the radiocarpal joints are intact and the intercarpal spaces are also maintained. And for all fingers, the carpometacarpal joints are also intact with adequate space. In the thumb, the metacarpal MCP joint of the thumb, there is a hyperextension of around 80 degrees with a dorsal subluxation of the thumb MP joint. And the IP joint of the thumb is fused, fixed to 70 degree of flexion, and it's fused. The MP joint of all other fingers are in around 70 degree of hyperextension deformity, and the PIP joint of all fingers are fused in around 70 degree of flexion deformity, and the DIP joints are in a hyperextension of around 15 degrees. That's the X-ray finding.
Okay, Prince, can you go back to your diagnosis?
Yes, ma'am. Is it visible, madam?
No, the X-ray is visible. Just go back one. Yeah, no.
Now, visible, madam?
No, that doesn't show the diagnosis. Go to the next slide.
Now, ma'am?
No, not yet. Anyways, what I need to know is, did you get history of how long it took for the wounds to heal completely?
Actually, history is not much there.
Okay. So why do you think that the history of finding out how long it took for the wounds to heal, why is it important? What
the
is it going to tell you?
Ma'am, the history is like how long it takes, because how the contraction progressed, madam. Like whether it started from the whether it was adequately splintered, then uh, whether like how it progressed, whether it started with the wrist and then like it gradually progressed, or with the direct injury to the tendons, like extensor tendons, like was the cause for this one, or like it gradually progressed from because of the wrist, it progressed to the next because MCP joint, then it caused a contracture to the PIP joint, then like it caused to the DIP joint.
Okay. No, is there some other reason why we would want to know how long it has taken for the wounds to heal?
Yes,
How
ma'am.
is it relevant to our
Yes, ma'am.
patients? Yeah.
The scar equilibrium should be, because if you are planning for any surgical management, ideally the scar equilibrium should be attained, madam.
Okay, I'll put it in another form. What do you think would be the degree of the burns to this arm and hand?
This will be,
What do
madam.
you expect? What would be the depth of the burns?
This will be, madam, either third degree burns, like deep burns.
See, again, now you're from Madras Medical College, right?
Yes, madam.
And I think you have a burns unit, or you don't?
We have posting in Kilpauk, madam, Kilpauk Medical College.
Kilpauk. So you do go to Kilpauk and you do happen to see burn cases.
Yes,
so you would understand that it is very important to know what is the depth of the burn injury.
yes,
So if you say deep burns or you say third degree, it's not going to tell you anything.
yes,
Do you think that this would have been a third degree burn?
It can be, but it can be either second degree burn, like a second degree burn with a deep dermal involvement, or like a higher one, madam.
Higher one meaning?
Third degree, like second degree with a deep dermal component.
So what makes you say that? Supposing you are not able to get the history,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
what is it in the examination which is going to tell you that, okay, this would have been a superficial dermal burn or a deep dermal burn or a full thickness burn? What
Okay.
is it that would tell you this?
Okay, in the patient would if it would be in a superficial burns, patient would be telling about blistering, then like a patient would have severe pain in the
We're not talking about the acute phase right now. I'm just asking you, as per your clinical findings right at this point of time, how would you be able to tell that?
and there might be a loss of sensation in the deep burns.
What
Sensory.
about the healing? Why am I asking
Okay.
you about the
Yes, madam. Yes, madam. In the deep burns, usually it will go for a secondary contracture. Like, otherwise, in the superficial ones, it will be by the re-epithelialization only it will heal. But in the
Okay.
other deep ones, usually it will go for a secondary contracture and it will heal if we don't
Okay, so
intervene
what do you
immediately.
mean? What do you mean by the term deep burns? You're saying superficial and deep. Is
Yes,
that the right nomenclature that you should be using?
No, ma'am. It's like partial thickness burns, which is like partial thickness burns, which can be superficial and deep, and next is
Yes.
full thickness burns.
Okay. So either you call it a superficial partial thickness, or you call it a superficial dermal burns, or you call it a deep dermal and a deep partial thickness burns and a third degree burn. Okay. So that if you use that nomenclature, it will be very clear to you as to what kind of burn it would have been considering the findings. So did you mention anything about the scarring on the forearm? What kind of a scar is it? What does it look like to you? What is the kind of scar that is visible
It's like
on the forearm?
it's like Madam, it's like not clearly visible whether it's healed graft, or like at times at certain parts it is like the
Yeah,
scar
in
is
certain areas, the darker ones appear to have been grafted. All right. What about the rest of the scar?
like other
In
areas
other,
it look
yeah,
like an immature scar, madam.
immature scar. So, how do you differentiate between a mature and an immature scar?
Immature, like there will be it will be red and blanching will be there, and the
Uh-huh.
other one will the mature will be dark and no blanching will be there.
What else? Okay. So, do you can you classify the scar in any other form in this? One is that you said it's an immature scar. What else do you see in the scar? Is there any hypertrophy in the scar, or is it a well settled scar, or there's a keloid?
the darkened areas, it's like seems to be a hypertrophic scar like thing, madam. It's like not a normal scar. It's like seems to be hypertrophic one.
Okay, so the dark areas over the dorsum, this appears to be the graft. Okay, and then rest of the forearm and this area, it appears to be hypertrophic. The elbow region, it appears to be hypertrophic. So whenever we see a hypertrophic scar, it indicates that the burn would have been what degree? It would have been at least
partial deep burns, madam, or beyond.
you say the reverse. You say it is a deep partial thickness
partial.
or a deep dermal. You
Deep
can
dermal.
say a deep dermal. You know how to classify deep dermal and superficial dermal?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the criteria?
It's based on the dermal involvement, madam, whether it is a
Yes.
papillary dermis or reticular dermis
Okay.
involvement.
So the picture that you see here appears to be more of a deep dermal burn. All right. So this has healed, as you said, by secondary intention. How long does it take for a second superficial deep dermal burn to heal?
Deep dermal burns, it will take up to 3 months.
2 3 months. Okay. And is there any way that you can avoid this?
Yes,
Is there
ma'am.
any way that this thing could have been avoided, this deformity?
Yes, ma'am. We can like intervene early in the form of like we can go for a tangential excision and put a graft.
Yes. So
Then
had you done a tangential excision and grafting, this kind of scarring and deformity would have been avoided, right?
yes, ma'am.
So this is a preventable deformity,
Yes, ma'am.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now you have classified it as supposing it was a superficial burn,
Yes, ma'am.
superficial dermal burn which healed on its own, can it still produce a deformity of the hand?
Yes, ma'am. Like
Supposing it's a superficial and deep dermal midway mixed picture and it heals in about 4 to 5 weeks time, can it still cause a deformity of the
yes, sir.
hand?
If the patient like hand is not mobilized because of the pain and all, if he's keeping it like the same position, it can precipitate a deformity.
So what is the position that the patient usually keeps the hand in? And
Usually
what
the
is the
patient usually the patient prefers to keep in position of ease, madam. So it
what
will be
is
like
that?
the wrist will be in flexion, 30 to 40 degree flexion, and the MCP joint will be in extension, and the PIP joint will be in flexion, and the thumb will be adducted and extended position.
Okay. And why does the patient put the hand in this position?
Yes, ma'am. Because there will be an edema in the hand, so it will be a bit heavy, and it will reduce the pain also. Like if this position is kept, and because of this heaviness, the wrist will be in flexion. And
Okay.
because of this flexion, as per the Landsmeer this thing and the tenodesis effect, the MCP joint will go for an extension. And similarly, because of that, the next joint, the PIP, the patient tends to keep in PIP flexion.
Yeah, actually, it is the when the wrist goes into flexion, the extensors get stretched. So then they cause the MCP to go into extension, and that causes a tenodesis in the flexors, which will lead to the PIP going into flexion. So how? Okay, so supposing that patient is putting the hand in that position, how could it have been avoided, even with the superficial burns?
Okay. So initially, we should have started with splinting the hand in a functional position, and also we should start with proper massaging.
Massaging, you would start in acute burns?
No, ma'am, not in acute. Once the wound settle only. We should
No,
start
I'm talking
with,
about the acute phase, right? So
okay.
you said you would splint the hand. Do you splint the hand in the acute phase, or you would keep it mobilized?
No, ma'am. Like nighttime, we will splint. Morning, like if the patient it can be mobilized, means we should mobilize in the daytime.
So that means you would give a dressing to the hand, or you would not give a dressing to the hand.
We will give a dressing, madam.
So if you give a dressing, you'll just do a saline dressing on the wounds?
With an ointment, with a Silverex ointment, we'll put the Silverex ointment above that. If like superficial, usually we'll keep it with the Silverex ointment only.
Okay, and then you don't immobilize the hand. The patient will be able to mobilize the hands properly. Who's going to see that he's mobilizing the hands inside the dressing? You yourself said that you have to splint the hand. Okay,
yes,
so you said you should splint the hand in the functional position. Either you do an exposure treatment in which you apply the ointment and then you can put the hand in the glove and you can ask the patient to move his hands and fingers continuously. That is okay. But if you do a dressing, the patient is bound to avoid mobilizing the hand. Okay, in that case, you have to give a sprint to the hand. So you mentioned that you would put the hand in a functional position. What is the functional position?
Yes, ma'am. Functional position from the wrist will be kept at 30 degree of extension, MCP joint in 70 to 90 degree of flexion, and PIP and IP joint in extension, and thumb in palmar abduction position.
And why is it that you want to put it in this position? What is the advantage of putting the hand in this position?
Yes, ma'am. Because the wrist, because even if it get contracted, like in this, it becomes stiff. The wrist, he will be able to do some position. That's why you are keeping a 30 degree extension of the wrist. For MCP joint, because at the 90 degree flexion, the joint will be the collateral ligaments will be maximum stretched. If we keep it in extension, the collateral ligaments become shortened. So it will be very difficult for us to regain that length once we.
Why do the collateral ligaments become short in the extended position?
Because the length will be less, because the shape of the MCP joint is like that. Once we keep it in flexion, the length of the it will be maximum stretched in the flexed position, the collateral ligaments. If we keep it in extended position, then it will be shortened. It will be short. So like it will regain that length after once we.
It will be relaxed. The collateral ligaments are lax in the extended position. So when they are in a lax position, they tend to shorten and get contracted in that position. All right.
Yes.
So that is and what is this effect of the shape that you're talking about?
It's a camp effect, madam.
What is the cam effect?
Cam effect means the PIP the proximal phalanx, like once in extension, it will be it has to once it is like flexed, the proximal phalanx has to move more, like it will be.
So why does that happen?
Around.
The cam effect has to do something with the shape of the metacarpal
head.
The
metacarpal head, madam.
All right. So
yes,
what is it about the metacarpal head?
So the proximal phalanx should have to move the entire circumference of that hemicircumference of the head to come.
Okay, so actually what happens is that the metacarpal head is very wide on the volar aspect and it is narrower on the dorsal aspect. So this is what is causing the cam effect and what causes the difference in the length of the collateral ligaments in a flexed position and an extended position. All right. So what is the most important point in the hand burn? Which joint is the most important joint whose position has to be maintained right so as to avoid getting this deformity?
We have to maintain.
Is it the PIP joint? Is it the MCP joint or the wrist joint or elbow?
Because wrist.
It is
PIP
the
wrist joint.
Wrist. Why?
Because it's there to start from.
Yeah, because the moment you extend your wrist, your MCP go into flexion. The moment your wrist goes into flexion, your MCP go into extension. So everything will be avoided if you maintain the right position of the wrist joint. All right. So that is the most important joint as far as the deformity is concerned. Okay. Now, you mentioned that the MCP, you mentioned that it is grade, Macaulay's grade?
Grade 4, madam.
So why do you call it a grade 4?
Grade 4 shows that there will be a gross distortion in the architecture of the hand. Also, there will be a functional deficit and the range of motion will be reduced grossly. And his daily day-to-day activities will be decreased. That's grade 4.
Come again, you said that the normal architecture is?
No, I'll start from grade 1, madam. Grade 1 will be, there will be an intrinsic tightness. Otherwise, the range of motion will be adequate and the architecture will be intact and the range of motion will be intact. Only thing is patient will be having an intrinsic tightness. That's grade 1. Grade 2 will be, the architecture will be intact. The range of motion will be mildly restricted, but it won't be affecting his day-to-day activities.
Mhm.
Grade 3 will be range of motion will be restricted and architecture also will be mildly distorted, and it
Yes.
will be affecting his day-to-day activities.
Mhm.
Grade 4 will be gross architectural distortion, and his
Mhm.
like day-to-day activities will be affected totally, and there
Oh.
will be proper deformities of the hand.
Okay, so what is it about the architecture that you should mention in your examination which you have omitted?
There can be, madam, claw deformities, botanier deformities, then swan neck deformities, and
Have you mentioned in your examination about the metacarpal arch?
no, ma'am, I didn't mention.
Yes, so
The
you
arch,
have to mention what is wrong with the arch.
usually the longitudinal and the transverse arch, it won't be maintained. It will be collapsed.
It'll
It will
be
be,
collapsed, and then what is there in this patient? If you see the hand, what is the position? What is the shape of the arch?
the loss of the there will be loss of the metacarpal arch, ma'am. It will be
What is
because
the
of
normal arch like?
normal arch will be like it will be like a cup.
Okay, and in this case,
It, it, it is a reversal of metacarpal arch.
yes, so it is a reversal. And why does this happen?
Because like the transverse metacarpal ligaments will go for a uh, contracture.
Yeah. So now tell me, to avoid this, apart from splintage, what is it that you should do in the acute burn hand?
Then we can go for a physiotherapy, madam, with active mobilization.
Apart from that, what else? You have to elevate the hand. Why do
Elevate
we need to elevate the hand?
because the edema will the patient will because in the dorsal aspect specifically it will lead to edema, madam, because if we keep it elevated the edema will subside, which is one of the major causes for
Causes for, supposing we let the edema stay there, then
the edema will cause to decrease the vascularity to the distal part, and the intrinsic muscle and all will go for a reduced vascularity.
yeah. So that will lead to a ischemic
Ischemic necrosis of the muscles, intrinsic
of the
muscles.
intrinsic muscles. So
Yes.
what does that lead to? What
It
position
will,
of the hand?
yes, ma'am. It will lead to an intrinsic plus position due to the
Intrinsic
contract
plus
plus position.
position. Yeah, so that gives the classical claw deformity of the hand, which is the intrinsic plus position. All right.
Yes.
So when you apply the splint, how are you helping? Apart
Uh,
from maintaining the position of the joints, when you
yes,
apply the splint, you are stretching the skin of the dorsum. So that
yes,
also prevents the edema fluid from collecting and allows the drainage. Okay. So these are all the things which you should take care of in the acute hand burn if you want to avoid such a deformity.
okay.
All right. So
Okay.
now tell me, what would be, apart from the position, you have said that the reason for the deformity you have told me, we have discussed that. So
Yes, ma'am.
what about the fingers?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Is there
In
some
the
typical deformity in the fingers?
yes, ma'am. In fingers, it can lead to claw deformity. Then it can go for a botanier deformity, or
Mm-hmm.
like go for a swan neck deformity. The botanier deformity happens because either the dorsal aspect, the central, because the dorsal aspect, the skin is thin, so the either because of the direct burns, the central tendon get injured, madam,
Mm-hmm.
or because of the edema and the scarring in a later stage also the central slit may get damaged, which will lead to a flexion of the PIP joint, and
All
the
right.
lateral bands will get volar migrated, which will lead to the proximal migration of the extensor apparatus, and the entire extensor apparatus will start acting on the DIP joint, which will lead to a hyperextension at the DIP joint. Hence, the
Okay.
botanier deformity sets in.
Right. And so are the fingers in a boutonniere deformity in this case, or is it just a contracture of the dorsum of the hand with MCP in
It's
hyperextension?
it's more like a madam, hyper, because the MCP is also hyperextended with
Mm.
the flexion of PIP, and it's not like a, it's more like a flow.
So is there a burn over the dorsum of the fingers also?
Seems to be, ma'am. It's the
Yeah, there is a burn over the dorsum of the fingers as well.
yes.
So now tell me, what would be your plan in this case?
Okay, ma'am. One minute.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening, Dr. Sujata. This is Dr. Radhakrishnan here. Good evening.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening. How are
We
you, madam?
started
Yeah, sorry.
the case because I knew that I think you
Yeah.
were having some exam.
Yeah. All those things. Okay, I just want to intervene only one or two points in the intrinsic positions in the hand, which Prince, you are telling about this. Whatever he has right now is what kind of position?
Sir,
The position which he has is what kind of position? Is the
the,
intrinsic weakened or intrinsic is contracted,
but
or
once the
what kind of position?
sir, once the intrinsics are becoming tight, it is intrinsic plus position. Once the intrinsics are gone, means it's intrinsic minus position, which lead to
Intrinsic deficiency is intrinsic minus position,
minus position.
isn't it?
Yes,
Intrinsic
yes.
minus position.
Minus
In
position.
this position, what would have happened? Because there seems to be skin graft and all over the dorsum,
Yes, sir.
isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Skin graft and all over the dorsum. That means there must be some attempted release and all would have happened. So what would have happened in this case?
Just 1 minute, sir. I'll just go. Sir, in
In
this
other
case,
words,
yes, sir. In this case, the long flexors would have gone for contracture, sir,
okay,
which will lead to a wrist flexion.
yeah,
And along with that, the gradually the MCP, because of the collateral ligament tightness, the MCP joint would have gone for a hyperextension. Gradually, the collateral ligaments would have
so what is the
contracted.
best position? What is the best position to prevent that?
We'll keep it in usually 90 degree of flexion, sir.
What is it called as?
It's like intrinsic position, intrinsic plus position.
It is intrinsic plus position, isn't
Yes.
it?
Yes,
So
yes.
the peculiarity of Burns contracture prevention is to put the hand in intrinsic plus
Intrinsic
position.
plus position.
Okay, then you prevent later contractures. So you have, that is the peculiarity of this type of hand contractures. Okay, so that is why this Macaulay's grading and other things afterwards it developed. So according to the function, you grade it. So you put it in intrinsic plus position to avoid later contractures. Okay, and also what is the role of the Landsmeer's ligament?
Sir, Landsmeer's ligament, also known as oblique retinacular ligament, usually it will be starting from the PIP joint, going over the volar aspect of the proximal PIP joint, and will be attaching to the lateral bands. So once the PIP is flexed, it will cause the flexion of the DIP joint also.
Okay.
So once
so what's happening to the Landsmeer's ligament in post burns, deep burns, as madam said, deep dermal burns,
sir,
deep thickness burns?
Yes, sir. In deep burns, what happens is like it will be migrating volarly. So
volarly, and also patient also will keep it in a comfortable position for him,
yes,
which is flexion.
Flexion. So there will
yes,
sir. So it will lead to the extension of the DIP joint in this case.
DIP joint. Okay. So that is why the reversal, all these things is based on the if you want to avoid all these things, you should put it in intrinsic plus position earlier itself. And madam, do you advocate any special type of splinting, madam? This kind of cases which you do, madam?
No, that's what I was telling them, that we have to just put the hand in the functional position, in the position of immobilization, not the functional position. Prince, what is the difference between immobilization and functional position?
Immobilization and functional position, madam?
Yes.
Functional position, we will be keeping the limb, the upper limb, like hand in the functional position, madam, with the wrist in 30 degree extension, MCP 90, and PIPs in extension.
That is functional position according to you? Then what is the position of immobilization? There must be a difference if we are asking you for both the positions. There must be some difference, even if it is a minute difference.
Yes.
So where is the difference? The difference is mainly in the position of the PIP joints.
Mm.
So in the functional position, it's a glass holding position. So
Okay.
your PIP joints are in flexion, mild flexion.
Okay.
Whereas in immobilization, your IP joints are all in extension.
Extension.
Why do we keep the IP joints in extension?
Because
You mentioned about the MCP joint being in flexion, right?
yes, yes,
What
ma'am.
about the IP joints? Why do we keep that in extension?
Yes, ma'am. Otherwise, the volar plate, because if it, the volar plates will go for contracture of the PIP joint, and then it will be very difficult to bring it back to the extension.
Yeah, one is that, and secondly,
And
the
the oblique
collateral ligaments. The collateral ligaments of the IP joints also are most stable in this position. Okay, and if you keep it in a functional position, your IP joint is flexed. Initially, it will be slightly flexed, and gradually that flexion will keep increasing. Okay, so then you will get a volar contracture also. As you said, the volar plate will get shortened. All right. So you have to put, we advise that you immobilize the hand in the position of immobilization.
mobilization.
All right. Immobilization and not
Okay.
the functional position. That is what is to be done. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So this grafting of the dorsum was done primarily for the raw area, or was it done as a part of release of the dorsal contracture? Any idea? Any history given?
No, madam.
No. So it was, I think you mentioned that the wounds healed after the grafting was done, right?
After the grafting, only like that.
Yeah. Okay. So now what is your plan for this patient?
Ma'am, madam, my screen is visible, ma'am.
It's visible, yes.
Okay. Then, actually, ma'am, I'm planning for a surgical management, so I would like to go in a staged procedure, ma'am. So in stage 1, ma'am, my screen visible now, ma'am.
X-ray is visible.
Now, ma'am,
Yes.
the treatment plan stage 1 is visible.
Yeah.
Okay. Then in stage 1, I would like to release the contracture over the distal forearm of the volar aspect, identify the flexors, release if adhesions are present, and a tendon lengthening in the form of a Z lengthening to occur a wrist extension of minimum 30 degree. Then there is a pronator contracture which I'll release at the origin of the pronator teres to attain full supination through an incision over the scar just distal to the medial epicondyle region, and try for a primary closure of that wound. Otherwise, I'll go for a skin grafting in that region. And for the defect over the distal forearm volar aspect, I'll go for a superiorly based abdominal flap cover from the contralateral side. This is my stage 1 plan, madam, to release the wrist flexion
Yeah. So
deformity.
why is it important to release the wrist first?
Because the wrist, because then only, madam, I can like one is like the pronation should be, then only you can position the limb properly. Therefore, I'm going for the pronator contracture I have to release. Then only you can position the hand properly for further procedures. And once the finger flexors are released, then only I can assess the further distal joints.
Yeah. Basically, again, you have to get the wrist into extension so that your MCP, it's easier to get them into flexion. Okay. And do you think that you would require a flap cover in this over the wrist? Do you plan to release the contracture? You need to give a releasing incision, or you want to do a excisional incision? How do you want to give it?
I'll plan for I'll go with an incision, but the scar over the region doesn't seems to be good, ma'am. So most probably that the region I may require to get a healthy cover over the tendon, because I'll be planning for a Z lengthening. So for a better cover, I'll prefer to go for a flap cover, ma'am, in that region.
Okay, so that is one option. But another thing is that if you shave this hypertrophic scar, okay, because it is all immature, there are some unstable areas also, if I can make out from the picture. You may just even shave off the hypertrophic scar and apply a graft there. If you can get the wrist into extension by shaving the entire hypertrophic scar without exposing your tendons, then you may get away with just applying a graft. But if while doing that you find that your wrist is not going into extension, then you will have to do a release of the entire scar over the tendons, and if your tendons are exposed, then yes, you will require a flap cover. Okay.
Okay.
And then after that, what would you do?